Okay, text. Again, this would be the first page of your first chapter. Again, you would put Arabic numeral 1 there. Make sure it's organized in a consistent manner. Make sure your division headings are consistently set up. Make sure your spacing is consistent throughout your document. Here's a big one, folks. Avoid what we call push-down text. As we've probably learned to our sorrow already with Microsoft Word, it has a tendency to add extra spacing, especially after figures and tables, and so that may push down text on subsequent pages. So keep a sharp eye out for that, and if you do see text that's really lower than it should be, make sure you bring it back up, because we will be looking for that. Another thing was, can we include running headers at the top like APA, or include what I call line numbering along the left-hand side of the page? Please avoid that. We don't want any running headers or line numbering along the left. Just keep everything clean as possible. Okay, list of references, bibliography, works cited. This is a sample you can see. Again, just make sure everything is set up as far as your entries consistently. Make sure you have correct indents. Your spacing is consistent within and between your entries. Make sure you use the correct style of heading. Now you'll see on your example that you've got two different headings, in this case for bibliography. The lower one, which is in all capitals, is the version you would use if you put your bibliography at the end of your thesis. So please remember that. If you see the heading at the top there, if I can, yeah, right there, that's the style you would use if you place your bibliography at the end of a chapter or a section or an essay. Okay, so this is the version you would use if you're just placing it within your document. The one at the bottom is if you're actually saving everything for the end. So please keep that in mind. Again, avoid split entries. By split entries, we're referring to something like widows and orphans that we mentioned earlier. Split entries are just entries where you've split it between two pages. Avoid that. Keep your entries together on one page or another, please. Again, if you look at the sample that's on the page here, you can see in this case the lower heading is the style that you would use if you have one large appendix at the end of your thesis. You place it at the end after your list of references. Now, if you have if you're placing your appendices maybe after every chapter, or if you have multiple appendices, then you would want to list it like the upper heading. That's the upper heading style that you would use. Now, the thing to keep in mind is that the only time you'll have an Appendix A is if you have more than one appendix. In other words, if you have an Appendix A, you need to have an Appendix B as well. So A, B, C, D. Please do not use numbering. Don't use 1, 2, 3, 4. Use alphabetical, A, B, C, D. Okay? And we also realize that you may be incorporating maybe scans of documents that were done a long time ago, or maybe test instruments or surveys. So again, as long as you meet that left-hand margin, then we're usually very accommodating on the top, the right, and the bottom margins if you need to kind of squeeze it in there. Yeah, with footnotes, again, we give you a considerable amount of leeway there. The main thing we do ask for is that you treat them consistently, use the same font for your footnotes that you use for your text, in other words, Arial, whatever. Now, as far as the physical size of the footnotes, if you need to reduce them down maybe to 10 point, that's perfectly fine. So you can reduce them down to 10 point, single space them, but the main thing that we're trying to get you to do is to ensure that your footnotes stay together on the same page. Okay? Don't have what we call bleeding footnotes. You know what bleeding footnotes are? They're footnotes that just kind of bleed from one page to the next. I had one, I saw once, a single footnote that went on for 7 pages. That's a bit much. So if you do have like gigantic footnotes, you may want to consider maybe endnotes at the end of your chapter or at the end of your thesis. That way you can write to your heart's content and do whatever you need to do to convey your message there. But otherwise, yeah, if you want to use footnotes, that's fine, but please try to keep them together on the same page. And then Vita. These are mandatory only for PhDs, but we do strongly encourage masters to consider them, especially now that you are submitting electronically. And Vitas come in usually two forms: a curriculum Vita style, which many of you are familiar with, and then what we call a narrative Vita. This is a narrative Vita style right here. It's usually 2 or 3 paragraphs, and it basically says where you came from, what you did at Purdue, and what you're going to be doing after you leave Purdue. So pretty easy. If you want to use a curriculum Vita, that's perfectly fine. However, the bottom line is try to keep any Vita text in the same font and font size as your other text in your thesis. In other words, try to keep it as consistent as you can with the rest of your document. Also, with your heading right here, even if you're using a curriculum vitae, just use VITA as your heading. No exceptions. Capital V, capital I, capital T, capital A. These will be numbered and counted like any other section, so please remember to do that in your table of contents. And again, you can make them as long or as short as you want. I've seen them as long as 25 pages. I've seen them as short as 1 sentence. In fact, my favorite Vita I remember seeing was a guy put it down. He said, "This is so-and-so's first thesis and his last thesis." True story. And finally, please avoid what we call creative formatting in your Vita. We just need text, so please don't include pictures, much as I'm sure they're very charming and lovely, but we don't need pictures. And don't, again, use unusual fonts or what I call creative formatting. Just keep it as meat and potatoes as possible. Now, we were talking earlier about cover pages. Let's spend a minute on those. With cover pages, these are still basically blank pages that we require before certain sections of your document. Specifically, these would be things like appendices, your Vita, if you have a publications section, things like that. List of references is another one. Yeah, I may not have mentioned that. But anyway, yeah, they will be placed before each section. They will not have page numbers, and they will not be counted in your table of contents, so be very careful with that, especially if you're working in MS Word. There is a way you can actually set these up in your MS Word document using like page breaks. But anyway, yeah, make sure they're not numbered or counted. They're just there, okay? They will have margins like any other page though, and of course that's how we want you to set them up as far as the heading. So if, for example, if you have bibliography right here, that's fine, but you will repeat the bibliography heading on the first page of your bibliography on the next page. Does that make sense? So you'll repeat it on the next page as well. Don't forget to do that. My suggestion with these particular pages is save them for last. Just use them as an afterthought. So in other words, once you got the rest of your document set up the way you want it, once you have it converted to PDF, then create your cover page, and then you can just drop it in as an insert, especially if you're using Acrobat Professional or some similar software. That way it won't mess up your page count, it won't throw you off.